My name is Jae Omar. I design and develop real estate, and I call myself a storyteller because this is the central focus of what life is all about. In order to give you an overview of the concept behind Odin, I have to take you to the beginning. In the beginning is not necessarily the beginning of the design of the house or the design concept of the house, but the beginning of where the story starts. And that's a little on the abstract. Homo sapiens, which constitutes the entire population of the planet, has one very unique distinction from the other hominids that have, are our predecessors. And that's we create myths and we tell stories. Refocusing myself in design, I looked inward and asked myself, what story am I trying to tell? And where is meaning? And everybody that does things in life has to find meaning in what they do in order to excel at it. And so that each one of these houses would be inspired and have an origin that then flowers to form and represents all the materials that you see around us. I wanted to bring in Scandinavian design into my signature contemporary farmhouse palette. After doing a bit of a deep dive into Scandinavian culture and history, I came up with the god Odin. Odin was an interesting character. At first blush, he's a bit of a war hero. He welcomes the warriors to Valhalla. He rules over that realm. But after a little bit of research, he reveals another side of his personality, which is a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more intuitive, being interested in poetry, being interested in literature. And so there was an incredible juxtaposition there and a balance. And that understanding applied itself to all the areas at Odin. The stories aren't always apparent. Sometimes they require some revealing. And that only happens after spending time there. It's not easy to make a large space feel intimate. One of the ways that we do that is by adding soft divisions that allow the transference of light, yet create a soft barrier. The entry, for example, there's a dividing screen that's cut from the flat white oak. And this allows the transfer of light, but intimacy to the dining room and both the living room. And this is a move that we do regularly in order to make large spaces feel more intimate. You walk into a large square foot house. You have large open areas, open floor plans, sweeping planes of white drywall. In this case, in the case of Odin, each and every room is meant to embrace its occupants and make them feel warm and be inviting. It was once said that God is in the details. This is something that I live and experience on a day-to-day basis. And if you pay attention to the smallest of details, the details that your end user will interact with, they'll touch, they'll feel, they'll see, they'll smell. If you control those details, the larger macro picture will fall into place. Powder rooms for me they're loosely differentiated from a painting on the wall. It's an art form. You're able to step away from convention there, as this is a space that will be occupied by your guests and people traversing the house periodically, but it's something that you have a little bit more creative latitude. In this case, I scoured historical information to try to find a poetic passage from the Vikings that resonated with the house. That passage is cut into the surface of the sink and creates the drain opportunity. The rest of the space, the 200-year-old beams stretched across the ceiling, the hand-applied plaster on the walls, is a exploration in simplicity, meaning the sink is the focal point. There's no mirror in my powder room, which has drawn ire from my critics. But I feel as if when you enter that powder room, you look at the sink, you look at the walls, you look at the beams, if the focus is still on yourself, then I've missed the mark. Every time I step into a project, I'm looking for a way to innovate. And that's what keeps me motivated and keeps me moving forward. I'm human, just like, you have to have things that you can attach yourself to that, stir the passion every time you approach a blank slate on a new project. Kitchens are critical to the success of a home. They're where most of the occupants or visitors are going to spend their time. So the understanding that they need to be warm, inviting, user-friendly, this is absolutely critical. In the case of Odin, we collaborated with Molteni, one of the finest kitchen makers in Italy. The rich use of woods, of toned and textured woods, works very well with my aesthetic. The focal point of the kitchen is the 5-foot glass and bronze upper cabinets that are lit from the inside. This is your visual focus. Extending out to the working surface, which is the first island. This is where the cooking is done. The cooking, of course, is facing the entire environment as opposed to facing a wall and disassociated with the people that are going to be eating the food. It's important that social connection is made. The front island is more of the, I like to call it the party island, where people sit, enjoy the fruits of the chef, and are able to engage. The materiality within the kitchen is both beautiful and durable, which is supportive of the overarching theme within Odin, beauty and purpose. Odin is approximately 18,000 square feet. It's a big house by any standards. Each space within the larger space, as I mentioned before, is soft divided into a more intimate space. And the dining room is a perfect example of that. Separated from the formal entry by a floor-to-ceiling wood screen, and at the rear, a wine cellar. So your viewpoint is 12 feet of flat-cut oak, and to the back, a wine display. So there's an incredible amount of intimacy there. Outside of the dining room is a water feature. In these rooms, I add water on the exterior portion of these areas specifically so that you can experience the refraction of light and water across the ceiling and walls of the room, which I've always found to be very calming and has captivated me since I started in design. Odin has a particularly beautiful staircase. The metal details of the posts are cut or mortised into each tread as you rise up to the second floor. Again, touching back on soft division, the fact that it's a monopoint staircase, meaning a steel stretcher going from one area to the next, and not a solid presentation, allows the transfer of light and supports the idea of floating. And since the backdrop of the staircase is our office, which holds a double-sided bookcase, and so therefore the staircase is viewable from both the office and the rest of the main floor, the great room, it was critical that this was beautiful from all angles. Let's talk about the office. Let me take a step back to COVID. During COVID, we had to reevaluate what a home space looks like. And with the understanding that everybody would be spending more time at home, and things that they would normally do, go to the office, go to the gym, and now are going to take place in the home. In crafting the home office spaces, particularly the one here at Odin, it was critical to provide a space that's both intimate, but also interconnected. That enables you to do everything you need to do at the office that you used to drive to, bringing that all home. And that you also are able to be insulated, but also still connected to the greater environment. And that's evidenced by the double-sided bookcase that borders the south wall. As you traverse the study, the gym, and the spa, you'll notice that the beams travel in a linear fashion. These are light spaces. These are spaces with life. The use of materials is delicate and filled with warmth. I was in a luxury resort, and they had a fantastic spa, and they had a fantastic gym, and they had amenities, and obviously the goal of those places is to keep you there and captivate you. My takeaway from that was, well, why don't we have that in our luxury homes? Why should we need to travel 17 hours in order to have that? We should have that in 17 steps. What we have here is something completely different. And it's hard to convey that to an audience that's distracted by special effects. We have real design and real quality. There's passion in every inch of these houses. And everybody that comes here understands that, can feel it. But for all the people that haven't been here, I need them to understand that this is something that's so very, very, very different. And I've spent my life, I've shaved, I'm fairly certain, I don't have any medical evidence, but I'm fairly certain I've shaved years off my life with stress in order to execute these things. With a group of people that are, generally speaking, by nature, they are diametrically opposed to my goals. They want to get in, they want to get out. This is construction. And here I come, slow everybody down. Let's focus on the micro universe. And let's craft something that is uncommon. And so I spend my week, my month, my years fighting with everybody around me, trying to convince them to come over to my side. The primary suite at Odin is a juxtaposition between volume and scale and intimacy. Upon entering, you have a vaulted ceiling clad in aromatic cedar. This is touching on the central theme of Odin, materiality. Beyond that space, you have a sitting area, 2 bathrooms, 2 closets. Sitting area has a lower ceiling. Why does it have a lower ceiling? That's an area that you're going to talk, watch television. And acoustically, it's better that the ceiling is lower there and not vaulted, and that it's not an echo chamber. And this contributes to the overall understanding that we need to have intimacy in private spaces. The natural materials, the open grain woods, convey a sense of warmth. Absolutely influences the natural light within the space. As do the plaster walls, which have a sueded effect and are incredibly warm and textural. What's hard to convey in these spaces is that my central focus in any given area is to captivate you emotionally. when I design a space, it's not just a question of how's this gonna look. Anybody can do that. There's no magic there. How is this gonna make you feel is what I'm interested in. The glorious playground of human emotion. How are you gonna respond to the space? Does it trigger something within you? Does it recall a memory? How does it make you feel? This to me is the pinnacle of design. I don't just design the spaces and then hand them to somebody else to execute. I'm involved and run point on execution. And that's because most of the things that we're trying to do here are unique, and there's always an element of not been done before. And so when you enter that realm, you have to educate everybody around you and bring them with you in order for that to be executed properly. I'm an emotional person. I filter things, stimulus through my set of emotions. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It allows me to imagine spaces like this and to forecast, as I said before, how you're going to feel when you enter the space. And that's presumptuous, and there's an element of hubris there. I explain that as I understand the environment, I understand what people need, and this is a position of servitude. Once I understand that, I give you back what you need. And this is critical for me in every environment that I craft. Theater spaces are an interesting proposition, and I think that Odin might have my favorite. The 700-pound live edge white oak slab, which looks at first glance to be immovable, that you're able to slide in order to reveal the space inside. The scale of the Odin Theater is much larger and taller than you'd find in a typical home theater. And if you go to the movies, which it seems like we're doing less and less, when you go to the movies, it's a voluminous space with tall ceilings, and it's broad. It's meant to pack as many people in there as possible, obviously. But the scale of it brings a sense of the grandiose. And that's something that, obviously is captured in the motion picture industry. And so transferring that scale to the home theater was part of my initial inspiration for Odin's theater space. The theater space comes with a complete bar at the back so that you don't have to leave. There's space for a counter and or a table in case you decide to enjoy libations or food within the space. It's tiered, as many theaters are. Along the bottom, there's a wainscoting detail where the linen fabric meets the recessed wood wainscoting detail. And that is done in a shu sugiban, a very textured and dark wood, done with the 2,000-year-old technique of burning the wood with a torch. This creates texture and drama. What better space to have drama than your theater? When I first started doing homes or crafting homes for sale, I like to call them that as opposed to spec houses, which maybe other people do spec houses. I do homes that happen to be for sale, but they're homes. That's a differentiating factor. It's obviously a business, and you have to pay attention to what you spend in business in order to survive. Most of the developers I worked with early in my career looked for places to cut, and the common place to cut was the ancillary bedrooms and bathrooms. When I started thinking about design in those areas, I thought about, well, who's going to live there? Who's going to be there? My son. My dad. My mom visiting. The thought of cutting in those spaces is unacceptable. They need to be as intimate and warm and as engaged as the rest of the house. And this early on made me not as popular with the people who were trying to balance the budget, but I didn't and I don't care much about that. The backyard at Odin is both complete, voluminous, and as detailed as the inside of Odin. The pool, which is a junior Olympic stretching more than 75 feet, has, of course, a built-in jacuzzi, but also a sunken fire pit that allows you a viewing angle that is level with the water line. The fire pit itself is a 4,500-pound boulder that took us 9 hours to set. In fact, at one point, coming through the house, it almost fell through the entryway into the basement because of the weight. These are the types of things that we do that others shy away from. That 9-hour journey from entry to fire. These are things that I think set us apart. We're willing to take that journey and suffer through that and ask everybody, unfortunately, around us to suffer through that in order to have this outcome. One of the most interesting parts of the project was curating the art. The single funnest part of the project at Odin. My partners, creative art partners, and D2 Art LA tirelessly worked to curate collections that underpin the myth of Odin. So everything in the house is, all the art, all the sculpture is myth-based and supports that initial concept. Legacy is an interesting proposition. You have a market that has requirements and demands. We're in business, so you have to meet those demands. But out beyond that, my commitment to quality, to innovation, to poetry, supersedes my allegiance to market conditions. That's what really rules my universe. And I believe that that truth will stand the test of time and communicate a sense of timelessness within my projects. Initially, when I started doing design work, I was eager to please. I wanted to hear what you needed. I wanted to interpret that. And I wanted to make you happy. Nobody is captivated by your work when you're eager to please. When you capture your own vision and you walk a mile over hot coals in order to deliver it, this is when people start to respect your work. Now, my approach has evolved into understanding the space, understanding the environment, understanding what's going to happen there. And the absolute most important thing, how is it that the people that come here, when they behold the space, when they experience it, when they touch it, how are they going to feel? And this has become my singular focus. Going back to my initial comments about storytelling, Odin has been an incredible chapter in my body of work. It's both masculine and feminine, it's bold and it's calming, it's beauty and its purpose. Those contrasts really define my life in design. It's complicated. Life is complicated. Design is complicated. Making an 18,000 square foot house feel intimate and warm for its occupants is complicated. But that's what we're here to do. And ultimately, you'll be the judge if we were effective. Thank you.